Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar, Accessing Economic Resilience Funding. Joelle, can I just check that you can see and hear me, please?
Yes, I can.
That's great, thanks. Okay. This webinar this afternoon is brought to you by Social Business Wales, which, as many of you will know, is funded by Welsh Government and the European Regional Development Fund and is managed by the Wales Cooperative Centre. We only have a relatively short amount of time for this webinar, so we won't be taking any direct questions, unfortunately. If you do have any questions, if you can ask them in a generic manner on the comments option at the bottom of your screen. My colleagues Tom and Elizabeth are reviewing the comment section and will either signpost you to relevant information where they can, or will make a note of your question for later. Tom has already put up some helpful links in the comment section, which you can refer back to. Thanks, Tom. If you have very specific questions, please email them separately to sbwinquiries@wales.coop and a business advisor will get back to you. We're muting the audio and video for participants today. We've had a couple of technical problems earlier. We've had a couple of issues with bandwidth, so that just makes it a little bit easier for us to manage. And as we're using Zoom today, it's a great tool for meetings, but with so many people on a meeting like this, it does become quite difficult to manage if everybody can be heard. So can I ask you all to just check that you are muted? If you're not muted, can I ask you to put yourselves on mute, please? Just to also let you know, we're recording our webinars and publishing links to them on our website. That's www.wales.coop/COVID-19 as soon as possible. The intention is also to publish these slides onto the website as well. So going on to the next slide for some introductions. My name is David Madge. I'm project manager with Social Business Wales. I'm also the market development lead on the operation. Joining us today is Joelle Campbell. Joelle is a market development advisor with SPW, and many of you will already know her from her time as business advisor in the South East Wales and Valley sort of area. Joining us, hopefully, is Alan Jones. Alan's the head of Social Investment Cymru at the WCVA. I actually can't see at the moment if Alan's with us or not, but I'm sure he will be joining us directly if he's not. Next slide, please. Thank you. So on this slide, we've got some useful links. The first two, Wales Cooperative Centre and Social Business Wales. As a project, as an operation, we've been putting together a lot of useful information over the last couple of weeks, which we refer back to quite often. On both of these links, you'll find information about managing your business during the time of coronavirus, in particular information on funding, finance, on cash flow management, governance, etc. So please do refer back to both of those websites, and we do update it very regularly. Also pointing you to the Business Wales website, and in particular the coronavirus-advice page. On that page is some really good business resources, and additionally there's the eligibility checker for the Welsh Government funding, which we'll come to in a minute. Joelle.
Okay, so over to me now then. I'm just going to give a little introduction to what we're going to look at today. So there are lots of different funding options out there for businesses, and I do appreciate that it can get a little bit woolly and grey with there being so many different options and no clear path. So what we've tried to do is show you a step-by-step guide of what's available for you, and we're going to take you through the processes and criteria required for the Welsh Government COVID-19 Economic Resilience Funding. One thing we want to put out is that it is a very fluid and changing situation. So what we would recommend is that everybody keeps up to date with announcements, because chances are things are going to change in terms of criteria, and also that new things are going to come online. So we really recommend that you keep up to date. And hopefully we're going to give you some next tips, really, some steps and tips that you can do to get yourself in a good position ready to maximise the support options that are available. So our first step, really, and I'm sure that it's one that most of you have already done and will be aware of, and that's finding out what support is out there, what's available from businesses that's been launched by the UK government and the Welsh Government. So the first one that we're going to talk about really is the Job Retention Scheme, and the furlough scheme is something that I'm sure all of you will have heard of and is probably in everybody's language at the moment. This allows employers to claim back 80% of their employees' wages up to a maximum of £2,500 per month per employee. The scheme is actually due to launch its portal for online applications on Monday, and we have been advised, literally hot off the press, that they are working on trying to get payments into bank accounts within 4 working days, and that any future payments will actually be paid in advance. Now, this is a big change because we all thought that as organisations we were going to have to fund those in arrears, put in place emergency funding such as bridging loans and overdrafts. There are still facilities out there, so if you as organisations are struggling, those options are out there. Give us a shout and we can give you some more information on that. Step 2 really is taking advantage of the tax deferment schemes and advantages that the UK government has announced. So to get information on those, go to gov.uk/coronavirus/business support. Now, that scheme allows cash to be invested into the business quite quickly. So money that should be payable as form of VAT payments can be deferred until January to give you a little bit of extra cash flow to help you. The next scheme really is the rate relief and applying for grants through your local authority. So most of you will be aware, and a lot of you have probably already benefited from the rate relief. So that's for small businesses and is also for organisations who are within the hospitality, leisure and retail sectors. What's also available are grants which are administered through the local authority. They come from the Welsh Government. So small businesses can apply for up to £10,000 grant from their local authority. Now I have to say you do have to apply for these schemes. It's a very, very simple form, but you will need to contact your local authority. Some areas, people have actually already had their money in that money sat in their bank account. For those businesses that do sit in the retail, leisure and hospitality, then that grant becomes £25,000. If you don't currently have property, or if you're subletting your premises, so you wouldn't qualify for this rate relief from this grant, there are still options, but we'll talk to you about those later on. So step 3, and what I hope will be pretty obvious to most of you and most of the organisation in our sectors, is that it's really unprecedented times for businesses, and we need to be prepared and try and take control of our finances and cash flow. So we need to look at stripping back our outgoings and trying to minimise our outgoings and maximise our income really. So talk to suppliers about delaying payment terms, giving you that a little bit of extra time, putting in place overdrafts, checking insurances and taking advantage of the government support schemes. But I think the really important message here is that you need to look at your cash flows. You need to identify where the pinch points are going to be in the next couple of months and how much of a funding gap there's going to be, so that you can actually look at the next stages of how much you need. So we're moving on to step 4 now, and step 4 are the Welsh Government funding pots. So the first one has come from the UK government, and these are all open to SMEs, so small and medium enterprises. They have to be trading organisations. You have to have less than 250 employees and a turnover of less than 50 million. Now we'll start off with the CBIL scheme, which is the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme. It's administered through banks, and you can find a lot of information on the British Bank's banking page. And it's designed to put cash injections, loans of up to 5 million into businesses. The government are actually offering an 80% guarantee against any loans, and there aren't any fees for processing this. There are no early repayment fees, and all the interest payment is actually covered for the first 12 months. Now, the Welsh businesses can apply for that, but also they can apply for Welsh government initiatives as well. So the Development Bank of Wales have a loan scheme that's operating that allows between £5,000 and £250,000 loans to be put into Welsh businesses experiencing cash flow issues. Now, I have to raise your attention to the fact that this scheme has already been oversubscribed, so they don't have any money available at the moment. But what we would say is keep a watch of this space, because it's been used up so quickly. We aren't in a position to know yet if more money is going to be released or not. So I would say watch this space. The next 2 grants that we're going to talk about, Dave will go into more detail in a second, but the first one is a micro business loan, and that's eligible for organisations who have 9 or less employees. You have to have a PAYE system, at least 1 employee on the PAYE system, and you can apply for a £10,000 grant. You have to be registered for VAT or be VAT exempt to qualify for this. If you've already accessed the £10,000 pot from your local authority, then you won't be eligible for this. But this is a really good option. Like I said, if you're an organisation who don't have premises or who are subletting, so wouldn't gain access from the rate relief, this could be a pot that you could access. The next one is for slightly larger organisations. So it's the SME fund, and that is for organisations that have between 10 and 249 employees. And what I'll do, I'll pass over to Dave now, who will be able to explain a little bit more about the processes really and the eligibility. So over to you, Dave.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so if you haven't seen this yet, Business Wales have put out an eligibility checker for the Welsh Government support. This has been online since the weekend, and I'm hoping that at least some of you will have a chance to go through this. If you haven't, then this is something I'll take you through very briefly first. The important thing to remember with this is that the actual funds themselves open on Friday. So there's a lot of information to take in potentially here. If you haven't been through this yourself, now is the time to go to do it. Now is the time to start collating the information that you need to apply for this money. So can I ask you to move forward, Joel, please? Okay, so I'm going to do this as if we were a small social enterprise, as most of the people attending are. So the first thing that I would say is, the first question is, do you work within the agricultural sector? In most cases, the businesses that Social Business Wales supports don't work within that, so we're going to answer no to that question. Okay. So, prior to the 1st of March 2020, were you receiving payments for goods and services? This is a very similar date to the furloughing scheme. So effectively what UK and Welsh Government are saying is from the 29th of February over into the 1st of March, this is your cut-off date. This is when furloughing starts. This is also when the effect on your business actually happens. Okay, so we can say yes, before 1st of March 2020, we were receiving payments for goods and services, and we're also going to say that we're a registered company with more than one employee being paid via pay-as-you-earn. Okay, so are you a micro business? Do you have 9 or less employees? So let's say yes. So is your business or organisation eligible for the business rate grant? Now this is really, really important. If you've already received the business rate grant through your local authority, either as one of the sectors which receives the support, hospitality, retail, etc., or as a small business that is eligible for rates relief, then you will not be eligible for this grant. Effectively, that would be double funded. So if you're not eligible for the business rate grant, you've then got the potential to apply for this fund, and we'll go through the eligibility in one of the next slides. Okay, so if you don't have 9 or less employees, if you actually have between 9 and 250, taking you into the medium-sized SME category, then you potentially have got the potential to access this fund. Again, bear in mind, if you've had the rates relief, this will affect how much you can apply for within this fund. So if you've received the rates relief grant of £25,000, then you won't be able to get the maximum £100,000 for this one. You'll only be able to get £75,000 as a maximum. So additionally, if you've got more than 250 employees, then there is separate support available to you from Welsh Government and Business Wales, and you do need to get in touch with them directly. Okay, so we're going to go on now to look at the eligibility for micro businesses. So again, 9 or less employees, you will need to confirm that you're not eligible or not further pursuing any other funding from any other non-repayable funding from Welsh Government as part of this. You'll need to demonstrate that more than 40% of your turnover since 1st of March 2020 has been reduced. So you will need to do some, you will need to show some evidence of this, either through cash flow or through receipts. You need to demonstrate that you're VAT registered or exempt from VAT. That you're not eligible for the business rate relief, and that you have an operating address which is in Wales and also have employees in Wales. You also need to demonstrate that you have some sort of sustainable business plan trade on this pandemic. So you need to show that you're a business that would, without this pandemic, would carry on trading normally, but also that you've got plans to move on from this. You'll also be demonstrated that you expect to align with ethos and principles of the Welsh Government economic contract. For nearly all social businesses, that really shouldn't be a massive issue, and there is more information on that in the links. As far as actually preparing to apply for this funding, you'll need your VAT registration number, your company registration number if applicable. You'll need to demonstrate the sector that your business works in. You'll need to give an idea of the number of full-time employees you have within the business, your normal annual turnover, obviously you'll need your bank account details, and which previous funds you've applied for and been accepted for. With the medium-sized businesses, again, some very similar sort of principles are in play here. You need to confirm that no other non-repayable Welsh Government funding is being pursued. You'll need to demonstrate also that in excess of a 60% reduction in turnover since 1st of March 2020 has been experienced. Now, we had a bit of a discussion about this earlier on, and we believe that when we say 60% reduction in turnover, actually what they're looking for is a 60% reduction in trading income. So that's the amount of money you get via trade, not necessarily via other income sources, but that's something we're trying to clarify at the moment. You need to demonstrate that you're not eligible for business rate relief. If you are, then the amount would be deducted, as I mentioned earlier on. Operating address and employees in Wales as previously. A business plan that exists to trade beyond the pandemic as per the microfund. You need to address inability to access funding needed from a bank. And you also need to confirm that there will be no future compulsory redundancies made as long as this scheme is in place. And again, the applicants, businesses and organisations will be expected to align with the ethos and principles of the economic contract. And again, that link is in the chat for you. Joelle, step 5.
Okay, so step 5, on this step, we're actually looking and assuming that you were either ineligible or unsuccessful in securing support from the Sybil scheme or any of the economic resilience funding. Alternatively, it may be that you have been awarded some of that money, but you've still got a funding gap and there's still a shortfall that you need to fund to get you through the next few months. So what the next step is to go through your relevant sector body. So Welsh Government has actually put a lot of money out to the sector bodies, and so they've also brought money in from other sources. So what we recommend is that you contact your sector body to see what support is out there. Most of them on their websites have already got specific COVID-19 sections, but just to give you some example, Sports Wales have a £400,000 fund to support voluntary sports clubs with grants of up to £5,000. The Film and TV charity can give awards between £500,000 and £2,500 for active film and TV workers affected by the outbreak. The Heritage Lottery Fund have launched a £50 million fund to support the sector with loans between £3,000 and £500,000. The Arts Council have a fund of £5.5 million, and that's split into 3 schemes. Their Urgent Response Fund actually closes on the 20th of April, and that can give awards up to £2,500. So say if you're looking at that to get in there quickly. And they're also going to be launching their stabilisation fund, which kicks in with £10,000 awards, and that's being opened on the 21st of April. There are also lots of other funding pots that have been developed for organisations that aren't trading. So third sector organisations that rely on grants and donations, this is the section where they would come. Because on the previous section with the Economic Resilience Fund, they had to be trading organisations. So what we'd really recommend is that you look at lots of resources that are there on things like funding.cymru and all the links that we have here as well. So once we've been through these steps, if we assume that you've applied to these bodies, and again, you've either been unsuccessful or you still have a funding gap, there is one other step that's left. So we'll go on to talk about step 6. So step 6 is where, as I say, you've not been eligible for that support or you haven't been able to fill all your funding gap. And the WCVA through Social Investment Cymru are actually introducing the Third Sector Resilience Fund and running that fund. So it's going to be there to support organisations that need that financial support with a limit up to 75,000, and that's going to be a 75% grant and a 25% loan. I will pass over to Alan now. Hopefully we have Alan who can provide a little bit of information about that.
Yeah, so welcome to stage 6. You'll have been through lots of wrangles over eligibility and lots of different things to have got here. Just to answer one of the questions that's on the chat thing at the moment about VAT. If you are not registered for VAT, obviously you will not be eligible for the Welsh Government schemes. Then due to that, you are eligible for ours. So that is the main thing that's pushing people through into ours at the moment, is where they're not registered for VAT for whatever reason that may be. So we're there to try and provide a safety net for the sector, really. We don't want to see people fail because for some strange definition or whatever elsewhere, then they haven't been able to get the funding. What we'll try and do is our best to gum up that particular hole in your cash flow, and what we're trying to do is to provide you with funding based on need and not on any other particular arbitrary measure. What we aren't there for is to replace lost income. So it's not a question of saying, oh, well, I used to earn this much, therefore that's how much I want. This is, we are expecting people to have done everything that Joelle referred to earlier, strip out all spend that can't be deferred, so that you really are down to the bare bones. And then we're looking at what sort of shortfall you're achieving then at the bottom of your cash flow, and that's the figure that we're looking to try and help you with. So as Joelle said, it's up to £75,000 available, of which 25% will subsequently become repayable, but that's not for 12 months hence yet, so I don't think there's too much to worry about that just at the moment. We're trying to keep it as light touch as possible. There are a few questions to go through just to know who you are, what the governance looks like, what your historic finances look like. So we do need copy your last accounts and management accounts, and then we ask you to do a bit of a cash flow for the next 12 months based on where you are now, and maybe when some form of normality starts to return, say from about September time, because the money is available to be spent across the next 12 months, recognizing that when things start again, they will probably start slowly, and that income suddenly won't come rushing back in. So that's there. I think what we're there to try and do is also give as much help as possible, recognizing that it is a very grey area. Don't be surprised at the moment if you ask a question that says, am I eligible for this? The answer is actually, I don't know at the moment. Things are changing all the time, but what we will commit to doing is going to the people who can give the answers, and we'll do our best to get an answer and find an avenue for you. So that's where we are at the moment. There's one query I'm going to try in here. There's a question here that says, this can cover loss of trading income if cash flow suffers and every other avenue has been tried. So yes, it will pick up. So if you are, what have I done? One, a gymnastics club that has quite a hefty turnover, but a lot of it is from membership fees and that sort of thing. Their actual VATable turnover is under the threshold, therefore they are not registered for VAT. So they have suffered, because you could argue in the widest sense that trading is providing that service to people to turn up and do gymnastics. Then that income has dropped off a cliff, and we are able to help because they're not eligible for VAT. And just to remember, really, it's not the lack of income that we're replacing. We're judging what we're going to provide you with based on the expenditure that you now need covering. And we don't have any of the number of employees or percentage of lock of turnover or anything like that. Ours is straight in and apply. There are no, the qualifying criteria are that you are a suitably incorporated social business. And I'll leave it at that. Back to you, Joelle.
Oh, great. Thank you, Alan. So as you can see, things are changing all the time. And as Alan said, it's really important to keep abreast and ask questions about what's happening in terms of eligibility and new schemes. But we've put together, just to try and round things off, a few ideas for next steps that you can take and some top tips really to help you get in a position to secure these finances and access these schemes. So I think it's come clear through everything that we've discussed today that cash flow and being in control of your cash flow is really key. As Alan mentioned and as Dave mentioned, funders will be looking at you being able to predict what your trade's going to be over the next 6, 9, 12 months, but also compare that to what it previously was, because you need to be able to demonstrate how that loss of trading income is affecting your organisation. And really assessing what your funding gap is, as Alan said, stripping everything back to the bare minimum of what you need to get through this period. We've actually developed some fact sheets on our website on the wales.coop/COVID-19-fact sheets. And there's some finance ones on there around how to strip back your cash flow and some top tips and some tools as well on putting forward cash flow projections. I think what's also going to be important is that you can detail what government help and support schemes you're actually accessing. And one thing that is coming through is that funders are really keen to show, for you to demonstrate to them and show them how you are utilising everything out there, from the furlough scheme to the statutory sick scheme to any Welsh Government support or any sector grants that are out there. And reserves is another big thing really, that if you have reserves, they're always put away for a rainy day, and we're in a very rainy day. So it's worth you being able to evidence how you're putting any reserves into your business that are available. If you have reserves but aren't able to put them in, then what we'd recommend is that you've got a guidance note from a board meeting of having that discussion and your rationale for not putting those in. In terms of preparation for the applications, what's coming across is that everybody's going to need copies of their governing documents, their financial returns, so the previous accounts, management accounts going forward, including those cash flow projections, profiles of key people, their boards of directors and their key personnel, and a plan for the next 12 months. It might not be an in-depth business plan depending on which fund you go for, but funders will want to know what you're going to do to try and get yourself out of this when business returns to what is the best of normal. So they're the things that we'd suggest that you start to get ready and start to compile, so that when you can actually apply, you get those there to hit those buttons. So I'm going to hand you back over to Dave now.
Hi, it's just really for me to wrap things up. I hope you found this this webinar useful. Thanks to Joelle and Alan for all of your information, and thanks also to Elizabeth and Tom, who've been helping out on the chat there. I know there's been a lot of questions coming through on the chat. What we will try to do is try to compile those and try to put them up either as a fact sheet or send them out to the attendees on this webinar. We will make the slides from this webinar available on our website as soon as possible, and we will also make a recording of this webinar available as well. So if you are working with other businesses, other colleagues that need this information as well, please do let them know. In the meantime, if you have any direct inquiries that are urgent, please call us on 0300 111 5050. Use the website. We've referred back to them a number of times. There's a lot of really, really good and useful information on those. Or you can email us on sbwinquiries@wales.coop. We'll do our very, very best to help you. If we can't help you directly, then we will definitely signpost you in the right direction. If you need more information on the funding and everything through WCVA, we can work with Alan to get that over to you as well. I hope it's been useful for you. Thank you.